And welcome back to Sports on Tap, our Ohio high school football coverage. It's our Week 4 recap, where we cover the Greater Cleveland Conference and the Southwestern Conference. I'm Rob Chum. We have Josh Jeffy, Dick, Sean Duffy, live from Studio J in Brunswick, Ohio. Welcome back, everyone. Want to thank everyone for listening. And if you want to check out any of our podcasts and what we're doing at sportsontappodcast.com. Right now, we're going to get back into the Suburban League. Sean Duffy, I know, is ready to go with the American, but we're going to start off with Ed Dick in the National Division of the Suburban League. And guys, how did it go in conference this week?
Well, we do have the first week of Suburban League National Division play in the books. As was the case last week, we have 2 undefeated teams and 2 winless teams. So let's get this started. First, we are going to start in Macedonia, where the 0-3 Nordonia Knights took on the 3-0 Wadsworth Grizzlies. Wadsworth got off to a quick 14-0 start as quarterback Joey Bachman connected with wide receiver Kristen Zille for a 26-yard touchdown, followed by a 1-yard touchdown run from running back Brock Snowball. Knights quarterback Robbie Levick found pay dirt from 10 yards out to cut the lead in half. Bachman then found Grant Martinez for a 21-yard touchdown and a 21-7 lead. The Knights countered back with a 45-yard touchdown pass from Levick to cut the lead to 21-15. Dominic Laparo reestablished a 2-score lead with a 9-yard touchdown run for the Grizzlies. Then Ty Evans from Nordonia caught a 40-yard touchdown pass from Levick to cut the lead to 27-22 at the end of the first half. So we had a lot of scoring here in the first half, and it looked like for a while that Nordonia was going to be able to keep pace with the Wadsworth Grizzly offense. However, from there, it was all Wadsworth. At the end of the day, I mean, the Grizzly defense really got after Levick. They sacked him 10 times. 10, and picked him off twice. Snowball, Martinez, and Laparo all scored in the second half. All in all, it leads to a 57-29 victory for Wadsworth. Quarterback Joey Bachman connected on 16 passes out of 27 attempts for 284 yards, 3 touchdowns, and had 1 interception. Running back Brock Snowball ran 9 times for 107 yards and 3 touchdowns, while his running mate Dominic Laparo ran 16 times for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. You know, this Wadsworth offense is just putting up points at a very, very high rate, very similar to what we're seeing in Berea Mid-Park with the Titans out there. They're not taking any prisoners. Nordonia's Robbie Levick did his best to keep up. He actually completed 32 of 43 passes for 397 yards. He had 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Wide receiver Donnie Wisniak caught 10 passes for 158 yards and a touchdown. Ty Evans caught 7 for 106 and 1 touchdown. So gaudy numbers all over the place. Wadsworth is 4-0. They are 1-0 in conference play. They're going to host Stowe Monroe Falls in Week 5. Nordonia is 0-4. They are 0-1 in the conference. They are going to travel to Hudson. Speaking of Stowe Monroe Falls, we travel to Stowe, where the undefeated Bulldogs hosted the 2-1 North Royalton Bears. The Bears proved to be no match for the Bulldogs, as Stowe quickly put this game out of reach. They led 28-0 at the end of the first quarter and 35-0 at the end of the first half. The second half started under the running clock. North Royalton was able to get on the board in the second half, but it was a little too late, as the Bulldogs rolled to a 49-21 victory over the Bears. Stowe quarterback Corian Rice is continuing his great season. He completed 9 of 11 passes for 213 yards and 5 touchdowns, 3 of which went to wide receiver Tyler Shaver. North Royalton sophomore quarterback Joey Marusik, he completed just 7 of 22 passes for 84 yards. He had an interception. He did rush for 119 yards on 11 carries. The Bears got their touchdowns from John Francic, Matt Griffey, and Dominic Carrillo. Stowe Monroe Falls, they remain undefeated. They are going to travel to undefeated Wadsworth.
Big game.
That is going to be huge.
That's a big game.
Lots of points on the line there, and I'm real interested in seeing how the defense is going to, if there's going to be a defensive battle for Stowe in this game, much like it was for the Solon game. Sean and I were talking about that game. Going into week 3, I thought that there might be a little bit more of an offensive battle this time around, given that they played a very close game last year. That turned out not to be the case. I'm wondering if this will be more of an offensive game, or if Stowe will be able to slow down Wadsworth and get them into a more of a contest that would work out better for them. Because trying to outscore Wadsworth right now may not be the best of plans.
It seems futile at this point for anyone to try and get into a shootout with Wadsworth. Offensively, it just seems like everything's clicking for him. Anything that's dialed up is executed, and it's producing points. I'm interested to see if really it's just the meeting of the rock, the movable force, however you want to say it, at this game. And this is pretty much my thought is this is pretty much going to set the tone a little bit for who is going to win this division, or at least be in the conversation to win the division. When you talk about Hudson's still there and all those other teams are still there having to play, but for a second week of conference and having these two teams meet up, that's great viewing. If you're able to watch that game, I would recommend going and seeing that game, because you're guaranteed a good show, whether it's a defensive battle or a shootout, which again I wouldn't recommend if you've been listening to the podcast and following Wadsworth these past couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great matchup. I mean, Corian Rice has more almost. I don't want to take away anything from what Kyle Van Treese did the last 2 years for Stowe, but Rice is acquitting himself very, very well as the starting quarterback for the Bulldogs. So we'll see what happens in that game next week. A lot of computer points on the line for both squads. Wadsworth could score some major points off of Stowe, given that they're a Division I team and they have a win over Solon. Wadsworth, Stowe can also get those same points from Wadsworth, being that they're 4-0 at this point. North Royalton, they dropped to 2-2. They're 0-1 in the conference. They're going to host Twinsburg. All right, our next contest. The 2-1 Hudson Explorers hosted the 2-1 Brecksville Broadview Heights.
The Bees.
There we go.
I'm building up suspense as you do it.
Yes. This turned out to be the best matchup of the week for the Suburban League National Division. Hudson gets on the board first with a 21-yard touchdown run by running back Kevin Callahan. The Bees. I can't do it as well.
You tried, though.
The Bees.
Ed, I think you could try with a little more effort. I think you kind of went into it normally.
Yeah.
But
You know what helped me? Sitting up in the booth listening to it all game long.
You committed too late. You committed mid B.
Yeah, that was
mid B.
You got to go
kidding.
in. You got to go in both feet.
It's like
first.
if you're trying to, if
the
you're
Bees.
a quarterback and you just went over the line of scrimmage, you can't throw the ball.
No,
exactly.
You have to run.
Yeah.
Brecksville countered with a 23-yard touchdown pass from freshman sensation quarterback Joe Labus to wide receiver Sam Wiglues. They did miss the extra point, so it was a 7-6 Explorer lead. Callahan punched the ticket to pay dirt with a 1-yard touchdown run, extending the Explorer lead to 14-6. Brecksville running back Alec Buckley answered with an 80-yard touchdown run, cutting the lead to 14-13. From here, it was all senior kicker Grant Gagne. He accounted for the rest of the points for the Explorers, connecting with 3 field goals, covering 22, 39, and 36 yards out to give Hudson a 23-13 lead. At the end of the day, these turned out to be the deciding points as Hudson defeats Brecksville Broadview Heights 23-20. Hudson running back Kevin Callahan rushed for 204 yards and 2 touchdowns. His running mate Dawson Wervey followed up with 9 carries for 70 yards. Brecksville quarterback Joe Labus completed 9 of 14 passes for 176 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Bees running back Alec Buckley rushed 22 times for 179 yards and a touchdown, and Sam Wiglues caught 6 passes for 151 and 2 touchdowns.
Wow.
Hudson is 3-1 overall. They are 1-0 in the conference. They're going to host the winless Macedonian Odonian Knights. Brecksville Broadview Heights is 2-2 overall. They're 0-1 in the conference. They're going to host Cuyahoga Falls. We will wrap up with Cuyahoga Falls as the 2-1 Twinsburg Tigers traveled to Cuyahoga Falls to take on the winless Black Tigers. It was a steady diet of running back Cameron McLean for Twinsburg. The Tigers actually scored a touchdown in each quarter, 3 of which came from McLean on his way to a 20-carry, 122-yard night. The Black Tigers were able to keep the rest of Twinsburg's weapons at bay for the most part. They limited wide receivers Christian Edgerson and Trey Radford to just 43 yards receiving. However, it just wasn't enough as the Twinsburg Tigers took this game by a score of 28-14. The Black Tigers got 2 touchdown passes from junior quarterback Ty Vasilati as they completed 15 of 24 passes for 155 yards. Both of those touchdowns went to wide receiver Tyler Gibson. He caught 5 passes for 84 yards. Twinsburg ups their record to 3-1 overall. They're 1-0 in the conference. They are going to travel to North Royalton. Cuyahoga Falls remains winless. They're going to look to get their first win at Brecksville Broadview Heights, where they take on the Bees. Thank you very much.
Don't copy it, Rob.
No, I mean, how impressed are you
With the Bees.
Well, I'm interested in the Wigloos. How many touchdowns does he have on?
I mean, he
scores at least 2 touchdowns a game, I feel like.
And you know what? He's becoming a very good safety blanket for a very productive safety blanket for a freshman quarterback right now, because it seems every week those 2 hook up for a touchdown pass or 2. And it's, I mean, look, he's able to. It just seems like the first game we watched, the 2 times he scored, he just was able to slither past the safety, and Labas got just enough time to connect with him. And as soon as he got that ball, he turned it into another gear, and he was gone. I mean, he gets open.
He's an impressive player.
He gets open space, and he's gonna make you pay. So that's impressive for the Bees.
Well, Labas only being a freshman too. I mean, that was a big loss. If they could have beat Hudson, they would have gotten a ton of points.
Yeah,
but a big win for Hudson, and Stowe went and did what they had to against North Royalton, and Ed looks a bit confused.
No, that sounds you have a very correct assessment there. I mean, it looks like Wigloos literally averages 2 touchdowns a game.
Yeah,
at this point.
yeah, and they seem to be. I mean, at least
they're not short touchdowns.
No,
I mean he covers a lot of ground with his touchdowns. He actually in the fourth quarter. I think it was a 70-yard touchdown he caught from Labas against Hudson to cut the lead to 23-20 before they failed to get the onside kick. So a lot of good stuff from Brecksville, especially having lost their all-world quarterback Luke Sternad last year.
Yeah.
He was the guy that really made that team go. But you return Alec Buckley, Sam Wigloos. Those are 2 major cogs in that team. And they're really doing a great job of bringing Joe Labas along.
Mm-hmm.
By the time he's a sophomore next year, and I would imagine by the time he's a senior in 3 years, he'll be up to Luke Sternad's status, if not maybe a little bit better, just because of all the experience.
As a 4-year starter, I mean, assuming no injuries, and really, I mean, Brecksville's defense is not anything to shake us. Again, I think Hudson's offense is I mean, Hudson is what it is. Every year
they're just a solid.
Yeah, I mean, every year they don't rebuild, they reload. That's kind of the way Hudson builds itself around. And they may lose a game here and there, but they rarely lose back-to-back games. They're coached up well, they execute well. And this was I mean, from what you described, it's a very good game. It's just unfortunately somebody had to lose, and and again, that could be the difference between a younger quarterback maybe not having the maturity to go and win a game, on the road, or even against a pretty good opponent that's executing well. That's a tough thing to overcome. But it's not as if he shrank from the limelight. Maybe just again, growing pains for the Bees.
That's right.
So yeah, I mean, good call. I mean, Hudson, they can get it done in many ways. In this particular day, they were able to find a lot of success rushing the ball, and that's where Kevin Callahan and Dustin Wervey, they really helped out Cole Pillay by being able to rush so effectively. Pillay had a big game last week against Cam McKinley, but most of that came in garbage time after they were already down by a lot.
Yeah.
Hudson, their best football comes when they're rushing the ball and they're able to get their defense a lot of rest and able to put them on the field to sustain victories. So my player of the week for the Suburban League National Division, it's another 4-year starter. It's not Ty Evans. It's not the projected 4-year starter, which will probably be Joe Labas. It is none other than Hudson senior place kicker Grant Gagne.
Nice.
He connected on 3 field goals.
Wow.
He scored the last 9 points for technically 10 if you count the extra point. He scored the last points for Hudson and was able to get them to a point where they had a 2-possession lead over Brecksville, and really helped them get to that victory there. So Grant Gagne is my player of the week for week 1 of Suburban League National Division play. All right, I'm going to kick it over to my colleague, my cohort, my compadre. Sean Duffy is going to take us through the Suburban League American Division.
All right, thank you, Ed. And I'm going to start off with the squeaker of the night here. 0-3 Aurora, traveling to 3-0 Talmadge. And, guys, this came down to the last second. This came down to the fourth quarter. The game started off with a pair of touchdowns in the second quarter by Aurora quarterback. I want to make sure I get this guy's name right. Colin McNamara, who was able to hit Alex D'Amico for a 20-yard touchdown, and Gavin Blunt, the all-world receiver for Aurora, for a 19-yard touchdown. And it was able to put up a 14-0 score at halftime. Then in the third quarter, Talmadge's Ty Shannon had a 2-yard touchdown run and was able to convert on the extra point. Then in the fourth quarter, Ty Shannon again scored again, but this time, as time was running out, Aurora's defensive special teams unit was able to block the extra point, and Aurora was able to escape this game 14-13. Shannon for Talmadge running back Ty Shannon ended up finishing with 15 carries for 71 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also added 3 catches for 44 yards. Aurora gets its first win of the 2017 campaign. They are 1-0 in conference play. They will host Kent Roosevelt in Week 5. Talmadge falls to 3-1 overall and 0-1 in conference play. They go out of conference next week to play Dover, and they will host them in Week 5. Moving on, as much of a squeaker as that game was, I'm talking now about a statement game. Revere put the American Division on notice with a 52-6 dismantling of the Revere Minutemen. This was all Barberton all night.
Revere really killed it against Revere, huh?
Oh, they killed it. They did. Oh, wait. Barberton.
Revere and
Yeah,
Revere.
it was great. I'm sorry. Barberton put the American put everyone on notice. Again, Barberton's running back, Jeff Parker, was on fire for the Magic. He was the bell cow. He had 15 carries, 154 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Last week's Player of the Week, Garrick Turnbull, also added to the scoring with a 44-yard touchdown run. Barberton's defense was stout all night, held the Minutemen to 0 points until a late touchdown by Revere when the game was well out of reach. Barberton is now 4-0, 1-0 in conference play. They will travel to Copley in Week 5, and Revere falls to 2-2, 0-1 in the conference, and they will host Highland in Week 5.
You know, I thought where you were going with that was that Revere was going to put the rest of the conference on notice until they face Barberton.
Right, yeah.
That's where I thought you were going with that. I'm
no,
like, okay, all right.
Barberton put the
Coming
rest
up
of the
Revere.
division on notice. I mean, look, it's no secret. Barberton has been just putting up massive amounts of points, and it just seems, again, as much as we talked about other teams and clicking, it's clicking for the Magics right now. They really cannot be stopped on the offensive side of the ball, and their defense is really stopping people. I mean, they haven't given up many points all season, so it's pretty impressive to see this right now. And, with Aurora struggling the way they are, right? Granted, they're 1-0 in the conference. Barberton looks to be just steamrolling going into conference play and continuing to rack up massive amounts of points.
Well, and their last 4 games are going to be against pretty good teams.
Yeah. I mean,
they have some 2-2 teams coming up, and then they play St. Vincent, St. Mary 4-0, Talmadge 3-1, and Highland 4-0.
Yeah.
With Kent Roosevelt stuck in the middle there, their last 4 games.
Yeah,
so that's a tough way to end the season.
And Kent Roosevelt is no easy out, as I'll get to later in my recap here, as they gave Highland everything they could handle. But moving on, my next game is actually a Copley traveling out of conference to take on Bedford for a Week 4 matchup, and they ran into a buzzsaw in the form of the Bearcats' offense, led by D'Angelo Howard and Davion Johnson. Bedford's offense was not slowed in the least. They were missing their starting running back, Kenny Wilkins, but they also weren't stopped in the least by the Copley defense. Bedford outgained Copley by 400 yards. That's not a typo. They had 400 more total yards than Copley did. In fact, Johnson ended up with 9 catches and 302 yards receiving on the night. Copley quarterback Joe Nedelas finished with 135 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, and Blake Traylor finished with 71 yards rushing in a losing effort. Copley falls to 2-2, and again, they don't have this wasn't a conference game for them, so they will open up conference play, hosting Barberton in Week 5. So imagine having to go deal with a Bedford offense that was clicking all night, and now you welcome Barberton, who just dismantled Revere, even though I said Revere dismantled Revere, but it could be argued either way. So that's going to be an interesting game for Week 5 when you see Barberton, who's been on a roll, facing in-conference rival Copley. My next game and my final game, I believe, is the Highland Hornets traveling to the Kent Roosevelt Rough Riders, and this was a close game throughout most of the game. In fact, it was knotted up at 17-14 at 21-17 until Jake Rogers, who was the star of the game, stepping into the backfield. He's normally a wide receiver and a defensive back, but because of the injuries to Brett Ponigvar and Max Beer, he had to play running back, and this guy is not built like a running back. He's built like a defensive back and a receiver. It didn't stop him. He finished with 19 carries, 254 yards, 3 touchdowns on the night, 2 of those coming in fourth quarter to put the game out of reach. Highland quarterback Matthew Ernest finished with 20 carries, 134 yards, and 1 touchdown as well, and they were able to secure the Week 4 victory. Roosevelt's quarterback C.J. Anderson paced the Rough Riders offense and presented considerable issues for the Highland defense, finishing 19 for 31, 181 yards, and a touchdown. Running back Nathan Jones had a 17-yard touchdown run to help the Rough Riders, but unfortunately it was not enough to secure the win for the Rough Riders. Highland improves to 4-0 and 1-0 in the conference. They will travel to take on Revere in Week 5. Kent Roosevelt falls to 1-3 and 0-1 in the conference, and they will face Aurora in Week 5. Guys, my player of the week is none other than Jake Rogers. He's had 4 stout performances. The guy's been all over the field, offensively, defensively, special teams for the last 4 weeks. This week he completely escaped his comfort zone, took on a running back role, and he shined. 19 carries, 254 yards, 3 touchdowns. The kid was on fire. Congratulations, Highlands, Jake Rogers. You are my player of the week. Grab yourself a chocolate milk.
Very nice. Sean Duffy out of breath as he does that.
Get him some chocolate milk.
Yeah, or a water, yeah. So, yeah, it was a pretty kind of a weird week for the American Division. We had a pretty close game in Highland and Kent Roosevelt and a very close game in Aurora and Talmadge. But again, I still look at the two. I think the 2 teams on a collision course right now are Highland and Barberton, and they don't meet until Week 10. So we could potentially see. I mean, again, I don't know where Aurora is. They squeaked out a win against a very stout Talmadge team. And again, Kent Roosevelt is not an easy out. They could play very tough. They played Highland very tough. So I'm thinking this one is going to come down to whoever wants it, Barberton and Highland. I mean, Aurora could be there too, but again, Aurora has one advantage. They get through most of their conference play before Week 10, so it could be a moot point come Week 10 if they're able to run the table. But
we'll see what Aurora is made out of with 2 away games against Barberton and Highland back to back.
Yeah, I mean
that's going to be
if they win those 2 games, I believe they'd have the division at that point because
provided they don't lose another game,
right? Yeah. Absolutely. So, I mean, if they run the table right now, they could conceivably sew up the division by Week 10.
And I think what hurts with Aurora is, they're used to pulling off the close games. So far this year, at Solon, they lose 15-14, home to Euclid 27-21, and lost in overtime to Twinsburg 35-28, and then pulled off a 14-13 win.
Right. So, I mean,
it could have went either way. Yeah.
They're a couple plays away from being 4-0 right now, so like I said, that's the X factor right now. Aurora may right itself in conference play and just continue going forward. But I've been thoroughly impressed with Highland and Barberton right now. And really Kent Roosevelt. Look, Kent Roosevelt is usually in the bottom part of this division, but they've played everybody tough, and they played Highland tough, which is not Highland's been very good all year. Granted, it was at home, they were on the road, but still, Kent Roosevelt hung right in there until the second half. And then Jake Rogers, who has been the difference maker in a lot of these games, was that in fact difference maker in the second half, scoring 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to pretty much salt the game away. So pretty impressive. Obviously with Copley having that performance against out of conference but a very good Bedford team, and then having to that performance and then having to start and play hosting Barberton, that's tough for anybody, and that's something you got to kind of put out of your mind quickly and move forward. So very interesting and very good first week of conference play in the American Division and in the National Division too. I think the Suburban League it's going to be pretty exciting going forward. What do you think, Ed?
Yeah, I'm looking real forward to the. You have Stowe and Wadsworth is obviously.
That's
gonna be
what I
the
can't.
Yeah,
wait
that's
to
a pretty
see.
good game.
That's gonna be the marquee matchup of this week for
Yeah.
sure. You got some of the secondary games. Hudson Nordonia surprisingly is 0-4 again. Or 0-4. They're struggling a little bit this year. I did not see that coming. Thought Nordonia with Ty Evans coming back and Robbie Levitt coming back and Wisniak. Those three guys all played last year.
Yeah.
I figured that they would have a little bit more success this year up to this point. There's still plenty of time to turn it around. It's only week 5. And then you got North Royalton taking on Twinsburg. We'll see if Twinsburg can maintain that edge. Haven't just defeated Aurora, Cuyahoga Falls. North Royalton started out 2-0. They've run into a couple of real tough teams in Highland and Stowe Monroe Falls. So you
North
see
Royalton's young too, so
yeah,
But we
you got
talked
to
about
learn from it.
Yeah, we talked
Yes.
about that in week 2, and even into week 3. Said they're an X factor team. I mean, they could conceivably snake bite somebody in that division, and it could be somebody who may overlook them because they're a young team. I don't think any coach will ever overlook a team, but some of the players may think, well, they don't have a great record. But as we're seeing, I mean, a lot of these games are closer than we think they're going to be. But then again, some of the games we think that are going to be really close end up being blowouts. So you never know. But
and then with Brecksville, Broadview Heights, I mean, they were we talked about them earlier. With freshman quarterback Joe Labus and Alec Buckley and Sam Wiglu's coming back amongst their defenders and their linemen. They took Hudson to the limit last week, and I wouldn't put it past them to be able to get to string some wins together. Their next 4 games are, with the exception of Twinsburg, I would probably put them as the favorite.
yeah,
They got Cuyahoga Falls. They're going to go to Twinsburg. Then they're going to host Nordonia, North Royalton. I could see them getting at least 3 out of 4 of those wins, and then they wrap up with Wadsworth and Stowe Monroe Falls. So Brecksville, Broadview Heights, much like they did last year. They had a really good season up to a certain point, and then it kind of just fell off for them, having to finish with Stowe Monroe Falls and with Hudson thrown in the mix there. So it's going to be, they're going to get a couple of weeks to get, maybe 3 the next month or so to get themselves on a nice track here, build up some points, and wherever this Stowe Monroe Falls and Wadsworth game falls, it's gonna, regardless of what it is, it's gonna be a tough last 2 weeks for the Bees there. For week 9 and week 10.
yeah. One thing I looked at when I was looking at the National Division, I want to give a hats off to Cuyahoga Falls. They may not be winning a lot of games and not, but they're playing every game tough. And
Absolutely.
that's a tough thing to ask kids to go out there and do week in, week out, especially when you're not seeing the initial success. And I really want to give a shout out to that coaching staff for keeping those kids motivated to play tough, even though you may not be getting the immediate results. You may not be getting the wins, and then again, I give my hats off to any coaching staff that brings themselves out there after not having a lot of success in the first 4 weeks and saying, okay, let's go forward, let's try and win this game. For no other reason than to win the game and to feel good about our and to reward that hard work. So, again, Cuyahoga Falls, I know you're not, blowing up the scoreboard with wins and everything like that. But you're competing, and that's all you can ask for. And that's all you can ask for with any of these teams.
Agreed.
Sometimes you just don't have the talent. Sometimes you don't have the scheme. Sometimes you just run in like, Copley running into Bedford. You didn't expect a guy to have 302 yards on 9 receptions. That's. I mean, I don't care who you are and how well of a defender you are. If you're having a bad night, you're having a bad night. Even the pros go through it. So don't feel defeated and keep on pushing towards that possible victory.
Yeah, and it'll continue to get fun here on Sports on Tap as we push towards the playoffs with computer points.
Mm-hmm.
Ed is the best breaking it down, and we also keep on top of the computer points. So keep it here if you want all of the standings and playoff points and everything like that. When we come back, it's our Game of the Week. We'll preview our Game of the Week when we come back. It's Sports on Tap's Ohio High School football coverage. It's our Week 4 recap. All coming up. Don't go anywhere.